Malone, Street Apologist live in the house. Monday, February 24th. Let me get close to this microphone. Yeah, like that. 8:47. I apologize for getting started late. DJ Next always helps me out on the technical issues, which I had a couple technical issues. Today's show, we're going to reveal something that is only known by a few people in this world. We're going deep into the history of One West Hebrew Israelism. A lot of you know who the Hebrew Israelites are. And a lot of you ask from time to time, how did this all begin? Well, we're going to talk about the founder, Abba Bivens, and we're going to reveal lots of biographical information about him. I say lots, but it's kind of relative, you know. But it's going to be some new information. And what it'll do is help you understand history better, as well as one of the most important religious growing movements of our day. And so my name is Vocab Malone. I'm going to be having a guest tonight, Khamr, fellow Shield Squad associate. And I'm very excited about that. So go ahead and hit that like button, ladies and gentlemen. You know, hit that like button. And also grab this link and share it. And welcome to Street Apologist, the show where we serve the underserved and look into the overlooked. With that, let's go! All right. We are beginning. Yes, and that is Mr. Scruffles in the background. How y'all doing today? It's a blessing to be here this evening. I know it's a little bit later for some of you on the East Coast, but you know, when I have a guest, I got to accommodate their schedule. You know what I'm saying? And that's just is how it is. So settle in. Usually we go about an hour and a half on most of the live streams. You know, partially depends up to audience demand and participation and all that kind of stuff. And before we get started, I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who has congratulated the channel as we hit 20,000. And that includes John McCrae, What Do You Mean? You know what I mean? And also just thank you to the people who really make it possible, the people who watch and care about this stuff, and the people who help run the social media. Some of them are going to be taking some time off coming up here, and I am really going to miss them. It's going to be very difficult, very hard. It's just not the same without the team putting it down. But at the same time, I respect, you know, they got important stuff to do, and they need to take breaks and make sure they're okay too. So obviously, it's all good. So with that being said, Khamr, how you doing? Welcome to Street Apologist Live. Let me turn your microphone up, brother. All right, let's hear how you sound.
I hope I'm sounding good. I'm feeling good here, calling from the East Coast.
Yeah, and I got a new feature on the program. You should be able to see the screen as it actually looks. Are you able
Yes.
to, yeah, how's that feel?
It is different. Yes, usually I would just see none of the graphics, but now I see everything. Yeah,
Ain't that nice?
it is. It's a good detail.
All right, well, what I'm thinking, Abu, is we'll read some of the information, but we'll start backwards. We'll kind of skip this first relevant paragraph and then circle back and read that last section so people have context for this. And our goal to do this tonight, we have many goals, but one goal, I'll tell you, at least on my end, is to try to have some dialogue partners, meaning we've heard contrary information by some Hebrew Israelites who purport to know the history of the One West movement, and they've given different information in regards to Abba Bivens than what we're going to give tonight. And listen, if that's you, tell us your reasons for why you think what you think about Abba Bivens after today's show, and you hear what we have to present. And I would love to hear what you guys think, and especially the Hebrew Israelites and people know the One West history. What's your reason for what you're saying? Don't just contradict us. I'd like to hear reasons. So hopefully we get some dialogue partners. Sorry, we're almost putting feelers. Are you putting ice in your cup? What's going on, bro?
Sorry about that. I'll mute it before I take a sip. I'm stirring my tea here.
Oh, jeez. How much stirring does that tea need? What kind of tea is that? Does it have chunks of fish in it or something? I mean, what's going on? You're not even answering. So
No,
I mean,
yeah, the guilt is incredible. But yeah, no,
yeah.
I'll be sure to mute before stirring. That's for sure.
Yeah, mute before stirring. It sounds like the name of a movie. All right, so I'm gonna before I flip over to show the screen of the book, Abu, what do you want to say about this topic, my man? Because we're getting into it, and it's your area of specialty. What do you want to say? Because I want people to understand why this is relevant for
Well,
apologetics.
according to One West oral history, the founder of One West is a man named Abba Bivens, but he's a person who's somewhat shrouded in mystery. You know, we sort of have essentially no information on him, or at least that's always the way it sort of felt for years, that it's we just sort of have an oral history that's passed down mostly by people who have never met him. Within the One West spectrum, it seems to be the case that nobody currently living within the One West spectrum, I want to put emphasis on that, has met him except for Ariyah at this point. Now, I know there's some who claim that that Johanna helped him with some taxes, or his wife helped him with some taxes. I'm somewhat incredulous about that.
Let me tell people those names. So,
yes, I'm sorry.
I know some of you know about the history of the One West Hebrew Israelites. Some of you don't. One West Hebrew Israelism is a distinct faction that grew out of a school that started in 1925, and then there was a later school that grew out of that school. That school is called the Commandment Keepers, and the later school's founders, who we're going to be discussing, and that's sometimes dated at 1969. And so with that, we're going to be discussing Abba Bivens, the man who founded that school that left the Commandment Keepers in 1969. And it's interesting that he's the founder of this kind of version of Hebrew Israelism. And as Abu was saying, nobody that we know of as far as who's associated with One West today has ever met Abba Bivens except for Ariyah. Ariyah is a very older gentleman. He's with the ICGJC, Israelite Church of God in Jesus Christ. And ICGJC is become more and more secretive, and Ariyah is rarely to be seen and heard from. Forget about it. Even with Comfy going away, to prison and stuff, where's Ariyah, right? And he's important because he's responsible for a lot of the doctrinal innovations and influencing a generation of young men who would go on to lead all their different camps and factions. So some people tried to get associated with him. Specifically, General Yohana of the ISUPK claims that apparently his wife did Abba Bivens' taxes. Al-Azhar,
I don't know if he claims that. I think I hear people claim
that
on his behalf. I don't know if he said that himself.
Gotcha. So ISUPK members then, I assume?
Yeah, something to that effect. It's sort of like something that I've encountered on the internet, but I can't attribute it directly to Johanna, but that's what people say.
Right, so there's really no, personal, and I mean, the man was he was from a long time ago, so we understand that. We're not faulting anybody for that, but we're just saying that how do they really know? Now Al-Azhar, of this leader of the Sakari, he tries to dig to discover One West history and claims to know some information about Abba Bivens, but we're going to discuss that briefly later tonight. And so I'm just breaking down a little bit. So
I would say, if I could say something quickly about Al-Azhar, I would say that while we'll be disagreeing with a position that he recently took, I think it is worth sitting up and listening when he makes a claim about One West history, because I think whatever disagreements we might have doctrinally or in terms of praxis, he seems very sincere in trying to speak with as many old-timers as possible to piece together the history to the best of his ability, and therefore it is a point of interest when he makes a claim, because I think he is serious and sincere in trying to piece together the history. So in that point, but we'll be disagreeing on something, some small details of this.
Right, yeah,
discussion.
I agree with that, and I appreciate, that's one thing I actually appreciate about Al-Azhar is that he cares. You're not saying this, but I'm saying this. My one thing though with Al-Azhar, in my view, is that with a lot of One Westers, and him included, I think there's sort of a level of defensiveness about perceived outsiders kind of getting inside information before the insiders do, or having knowledge or access to certain components, especially of the history, that maybe a lot of One Westers themselves don't have. And so I perceive a certain level of defensiveness that may sometimes be knee-jerk reactions, where if they hear us say it, if they've heard a various version, even if it's not well sourced, they're quick to say, no, that's not right. Here's what it is. I think that's in the case of this, that may be what Al-Azhar is doing. However, I would like to hear Al-Azhar's reasons. Now, sometimes the trouble with some of these guys, they'll say, well, we don't have to tell you. I don't need to. Wouldn't you like to know? Maybe Al-Azhar won't feel that way, though, because we don't have to always be adversarial. It's up to him, you know what I mean? But I'd be fascinated to hear what he would have to say as far as, okay, what are your reasons? We'll try to give our reasons here. I'd like to know his reasons for that. So it is important, right?
Oh, absolutely. And what I would say really quickly about, in terms of trying to piece together the history of specifically Abba Bivens, this quasi-mythical figure almost, what's happened is for quite some time, we've had to rely sort of on the oral history within One West.
Mm-hmm.
What's changed recently is first, Uziel Lewy, who's a non-One Wester, spoke, as has been covered in previous videos on your channel.
Mm-hmm.
He got to speak with a number of old-timers outside of the One West spectrum who remembered Abba Bivens, or Pop Bivens as he was known, and sort of gave a different history, a different look, you know, and a different understanding or new details. So that Uziel Lewy was one of the first steps, first sources, which was interesting. His research is very much appreciated. And now a second stream is coming through the writings of Sam Kestenbaum, which you're going to cover. And he's sort of introduced us through his book, but also, you know, through discussions on his sources, on what you can find in census materials, what you can find in various like sites like Ancestry.com and other old records, and also what you can find at the Schoenberg Library, which you've been to and I've been to and will be returning to in the near future.
Yeah, so this is real stuff. I hope people understand, meaning you're talking about getting into old records and data, not just hearsay anymore. And I think that's part of the point that Abu's trying to make. We're talking about, you know, actual paper records and other variety of sources, even photographs, and then visiting research centers and libraries, and we'll talk more about this later, but there's actually been some contacts made. I'm just almost say for now, some contacts made with certain members of Abba Bivens' family. And so my point is the research is actually ongoing. And so we're taking this serious because I understand they'll find this comparison offensive, but look, when it comes to Mormonism, when Mormonism became more and more important on the world stage, obviously in the United States, but even the world stage with all the missionary efforts, it became more and more important to understand the background, the history, and really who is Joseph Smith, the man who's claiming to restore the church. And so more research got done, and people tried to go back to primary sources, and they would find things like, was he a member of this church at this time when this revival was happening? And different things like that. It became important to know what's the nature of his family. He's got in trouble with the law sometimes. What was the nature of that? Those kinds of things, right? And people have done things like that. Similar, people try to kind of unweave the fictional aspects of Islamic history in regards to Islam and even the Arabian Peninsula, pre-Islam. They've tried to unweave sort of the Islamic version of history to find out what's what with that. And these things are important. We don't just dwell there, but they are important. So that's part of what we're doing, because very few people are doing this. And even though there's no one Westers except for Arya that we know of who are alive, who know Abba Bivens, there are people alive who know Abba Bivens. And so it's important while we can to get this information and try to even talk to them. So here we go. Are you ready for, to jump into sharing this? I'm going to share the screen here, Brother Abu. I'm going to share it, and then, people will be able to actually see some of what we're talking about. So can you briefly give the background to the book we are about to dive into, Mr. Abu Khamr?
So there were three scholars, Christopher Driscoll, Anthony Pinn, and Monica Miller. They edited what's essentially an anthology. It's a collection of articles by different scholars and different journalists of the sort. And the book is titled Kendrick Lamar and the Making of Black Meaning. Routledge published it in 2019, just last year. Yeah, there it is right there. Mm-hmm. And so this book has a number of chapters, and the focus is on Kendrick Lamar, but because Kendrick Lamar has recently come under the influence of the Israelite movement in general, and more specifically One Westism, and more specifically still through his cousin, the IUIC approach to One West Israelism, there's a chapter dedicated to that, and they asked Sam Kestenbaum to contribute that chapter. So it's the 16th chapter of the book. It's titled I'm an Israelite, Kendrick Lamar's Spiritual Search, Hebrew Israelite Religion, and the Politics of a Celebrity Encounter. And it's an interesting chapter. It covers a lot of different things, but towards the beginning, about a page or two in, 2 or 3 pages in, he gets into some of the history of Abba Bivens, and he touches on Abba Bivens' actual name, who his parents were, where he was born. And in our private attempts to look into this, we've come across some of the same material. And so we agree with the claim. I certainly do agree with the claims that Kestenbaum makes in this book. And we mentioned earlier Al-Azhar's position. I think it's worth mentioning now. Al-Azhar's position is that Abba Bivens' real name was Leroy Bivens, I believe, and that he was from Georgia, and maybe it's certainly a state in the South. And what Kestenbaum found and what I've stumbled across is somewhat different. And we'll touch on that in a moment. And by the way, speaking of his family, Jacob Dorman has, through his studies of Hatzaad Harishon, which may come up later, he's spoken to members of Bivens' family as well before we got into this. I'm sorry.
Right, and it seems like one of the people he spoke with, at first he actually thought may have been the man called Abba himself, but then I think we came to realize through various sorts of confirmation that was Abba Bivens', I think, oldest son.
Yes, or certainly his son. I don't know if it was his oldest, but yeah, one of his sons.
Yeah. All right. So in the beginning, it's a lot of stuff about the Commandment Keepers. All right, that's kind of what we're dealing with there in the beginning, mainly. Now I'm going to skip the page that has some of the main information where we're really going to look at here. I'm going to skip that for now, and then I'm going to start here about Abba Bivens. And let me. So again, you can see what's on the screen, correct?
Yes, I can see what's on the screen. Yes, I'm actually trying to check it against my hard copy.
Okay, good. And the one reason why this information hasn't been widely disseminated, number one, the book is brand new. If you saw in the beginning when I was messing around with it on the Kindle here, 2020 is the publication date. Another reason is it's super expensive. Because it's like an academic book, and that kind of happens with some of those sometimes. Okay, so let's see. By the 1950s, he and his family had relocated to New York City and fallen into the Commandment Keepers' orbit. And let me show you. So the book is heavily
you're
sourced.
On page, as per the hard copy, you would have been on page 278 at this point.
Gotcha. And here, you notice the spelling's different. We'll get into that later, but I'm going to bring up the footnote. Oh, you know what I need to do? I need to move this little guy here, so we're going to be able to see it. And so, what chapter again is this, Abu? What chapter is this?
16th chapter of the book.
16th chapter of the book, okay.
And right now you're on the equivalent of page 278 in the hard copy.
Okay.
In case someone gets their hand on a hard copy, which is now at certain libraries. For those who are in New York, the book is available at the New School Library.
It's called the New School Library?
Well, the name of the school is the New School. It's a sort of alternative college in Manhattan, and their library has the book at present.
Oh, okay, right on. Have you seen the physical copy? Because I know you got the PDF.
Yeah, not yet.
Oh, okay. Bivens attended the Commandment Keepers somewhat regularly in the 1940s and 1950s. See the congregation attendance ledger in the Commandment Keepers Ethiopian Hebrew Congregation Records, Schomburg Center for Research on Black Culture. So all I did, Abu, is I clicked on footnote 26, and I'm showing people already the nature of the depth of this information. So Abu explained the school and explained the attendance ledger and why that's important in regards to his name.
Well, so we've always heard through through the oral legends that he was a member of the Commandment Keepers in one way or another. However, what Sam Kestenbaum has recently learned and recently uncovered and covers in this book to some small degree, at least at his footnotes, is that a member of the Commandment Keepers at a significantly later time gave a large amount of material from the group, including their attendance rolls, to the Schomburg Library. And Sam Kestenbaum was able to go over that material, and he was able to find places in their attendance books and their log books where Abba Bivens signed in as visiting for that day, as attending, services or whatever for that
So
day. And so yeah, as you noted, he would spell his name different. He would spell his name the same way that Chaim Bivens from Hatzaad Harishon did, which is Bibbins.
right, and this is important because in academic research, oral history is one thing. When it's especially if it's eyewitness testimony, you don't discount that, et cetera, et cetera. However, the idea is confirmation by multiple sources, and now once you're getting into a situation where you've got his name on the attendance ledgers so that means you could even know how often he's attending, or at least how often he's signing in when he's attending, which it seems like everybody did. So this is back in the 40s and 50s. So the school pops up around 1929, I believe, and 1919. What is it? I can't remember anything right now. Whenever
I'm not sure, but I think it's 1919 they started,
yeah,
but Bivens was there in the 40s and 50s.
Right. And so I'm just giving people an idea. So the school called the Commandment Keepers, it's there in Harlem, New York. There it is, popping off. Hey, shout out to Liza J. Thank you very much for the super chat. I don't know if there's been anyone else, so sorry if I missed you, but definitely thanks to you, Liza, as well as thank you for sharing everything that you share. So here we go, there in 1919, and here you have Abba Bivens. We'll just call him by his... It gets confusing because it's like, which name should we be using here? The One West style name, Bivins, or his real name, as far as last name, Bivins. Anyways, he's regularly attending in the 40s and 50s, and we could see that that means we have his signature. Do you guys understand that? Because at this school, which is the full name at the time, was the Commandment Keepers Ethiopian Hebrew Congregation Records, which tells you a lot, by the way. We were in the library. If you guys remember last summer when we were in New York, there's pictures of me, Sam Shamoon, Adam Coleman, no pictures of Abu, but he was there with us, I promise. And, of course, the cameraman, and I don't know, was there someone else with us? I don't remember. Oh, yeah, the brother from PR came and rolled with us, too, the brother from PR. Thank you, Nate. Appreciate it. Nadine, thank you very much for the super chat. Thank you, Nate. Appreciate that. Love you guys. Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Nadine. All right, so we were there. Now, we didn't get into that part of the room, but Sam has. And we are going to go back, just like you said. So this is right there in Harlem. Boom, boom, boom. Schomburg Center for Research of Black Culture. And now we have the ledgers of him attending. So this is, we're starting off. It's already important stuff. Okay, and by the 1970s, he had split off from Matthew, that's Rabbi Matthew's organization, and founded his own religious school called the Israeli Tanakh School. Now, that's one name, that's one of the names, but look at this. I'm clicking on the footnote there again, and that name apparently is also evidenced in the records in library in the Schomburg Center for Research of Black Culture, New York Public Library, Box 1, Folder 1. So when you have archival situations, you have things people can check out, even though they're kind of hard to. When I say check out, I mean go view or see. You have to make an appointment. It's a whole process and all this kind of stuff. But you give like these. It's kind of funny. You give like the location of it physically. So it's Box 1, Folder 1. So we really know actually where it is. But go ahead.
And we may be showing these materials in the future.
Yes.
But if I may, what's actually, and forgive me if I'm skipping ahead here,
right.
What he's referring to there is Hatzaad Harishon was a group of African Americans who were much more in line with mainstream rabbinic Judaism. And they were attempting to bring what might be described as groups which were more on the fringes, essentially Israelite groups. They were attempting to bring them into the mainstream Jewish fold. And so they would reach out to different groups by writing to them and have these correspondences with them. And what Kessenbaum found is a letter, a response from Bivens, from the man that they call Abba Bivens. There's a response from him to Hatzaad Harishon. And they have a letter signed by him, and it even has a letterhead of the group that existed at the time in the very early 70s. He was apparently already at One West and alive, which is interesting in itself, because I remember one of the legends that I had heard for years was that One West was set up after he died, that he was around the corner on Fifth Avenue.
Yeah, and that's definitely not true, because we have letterhead, to reiterate, that's signed by Abba Bivens. And so
and it's already referencing One West. Yep.
Yeah, so he's clearly at the school. Wait, you said One West. You mean they were at that address already?
Yes, that's what's significant
Oh,
because
okay.
the
So
legends the way the legends reached me for years was that,
when he died, then they moved the school. But you're
they
saying
went
the
around the
address
corner.
was
Yeah.
you're saying the address was already 1 West 125th.
Yes, that he was alive when they got control of 1 West 125th, because when they had a location there, because there's a letter signed by him, and on the letterhead of the letter is the address.
Now, I cannot remember if that letter was dated.
Yes, it's in the 70s. That's also significant. Let me see if it's mentioned in here. I would have to look into my own notes, but I think it's 1971.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you got to wonder. I mean, that wasn't the first location of the school, though, right?
As a matter of fact, it comes up about in the paragraph underneath the paragraph currently on your page, currently on your screen.
But
So this is also on page 278.
I'll click on the. Do you know that if that was the first location of the school once they broke away?
Well, I don't. I mean, the thing was, the way I understood it is that Bivens had a different school on Fifth Avenue in the building where
Right. Well, maybe
where
that's true.
was.
Maybe
Yes,
that's
that may
true.
be true.
Maybe
I don't know, but
maybe after
apparently
they
he
left,
himself made it to 1 West. Yeah.
maybe after they left in 1969, they went somewhere. Let's say, for example, they had a year lease, and they were there from 1969 to 1970, perhaps, and then by the time they get to 71. Right, then that's when, because that's when the letter's dated, so they've got to be there by then. But fascinating. All right, let me continue on reading here. And this gets very interesting, and this is all confirmed, what we're about to read, okay? This is stuff Abu's been talking about for years. I've been talking about for a few years, but he's been talking, actually, Abu, you've been talking about some of this stuff for decades. His acolytes today recall him as a reincarnated Elijah or John the Baptist. In fact, there's even a whole video where the one homie from Detroit of the Good Samaritans, or the Good Shepherds, shoot, I just forgot, but whichever group it was, where that guy, a cool guy, I'm not remembering his name right now, I'm so sorry, but he even talks about a video, where he talks about these old One West legends where supposedly at parties, Abba Bivens reportedly would eat locust. And the idea was that it was kind of evidence further of the fact that he was John the Baptist. And this guy is broken away from some of the One West traditions. So he was actually calling all of that kind of, he was skeptical about those claims and those kind of legendary stories. And even if they did happen, as to their significance, did Abba Bivens eat locust at parties, and was it really a big deal, But he is considered Elijah. It's Elijah and John the Baptist, isn't it? It's
Correct.
Not Elijah
Yes.
it's Elijah and John the Baptist, isn't it?
Correct. That's the way it's understood now.
Yeah.
I have no idea if anyone believed that back in his time, but yes, that's the way it's understood.
And this is true as well. He's always described as a tough-talking street preacher who would brawl over theology. And so we have actually spoken about that as well. And here, look what he sourced. Now, this is not the only place you could source this, everybody. But some of you won't recognize footnote 28. Abu, oh man, look at me. Abu, do you recognize who's the producer or who put out footnote 28? Are you able to see it?
Original reality? It's a YouTube video, clearly.
No. Original royalty, history of the Israelite schools, disc 1, excerpt, YouTube. That's IUIC. That's Nate's recollection of the history of the school.
Yes. No,
so this
have made that connection.
Yeah, so that's IUIC that he's sourcing there. So this is people, from Job. Hey, shout out to Corch Chandler. Thank you for congratulations on 20K all day, every day. And thank you for the super chat. Shout out to you for real, man. Chandler's a cool people. All right, so this is true about the way he's described. And he even references one example, which is from Nathaniel. It's difficult to know how much embellishment there is in the retellings. But the notion that Bivens was more radical or abrasive than Matthew, and that this was in part why he forged off on his own, is pervasive and repeated by both his boosters and detractors. Let's see. Sekinguni commanding General Yohana the truth about Ariyah on the ISUPK 12 tribe chart Abba Bivens. Huh. I don't even know if I've seen that YouTube video. Sekinguni? Gunny? It looks like it's some kind of interview with Yohana. Others say his break with the Commandment Keepers came because he couldn't stomach Matthew's teaching that Jesus was not the prophesied Messiah. Comment Abu.
Yeah, I'm not certain what to make of that. I know this is a point of contention with, for example, Al-Azhar. He feels that anyone who tries to dispute that Abba Bivens believed in the New Testament does so baselessly, that the fact of the matter from his perspective is that everything points to him believing in the New Testament. For what it's worth, the one audio recording that I know of certainly has him quoting from Romans and Revelation. So, I mean, it may be the case, although being that he came out of the Commandment Keepers, I have to wonder if his approach to the New Testament was, as it was with the early days of One West, somewhat more of a hook than just sort of, entirely God-breathed scripture.
There seemed to be some evidence of that, meaning, hey, it'd be easier for people to step what we're bringing if we also include Jesus and the New Testament. Shout out to BEK Apologist in the live chat. Everybody subscribe to him. Shout out to Vernon Brown in the chat as well. And
Vernon
so, it's a parody account that's pretty funny.
Oh, okay.
We've got Baruch Yehuda, member of the International Israelite Board of Rabbis, an interview with Sam Kestenbaum on June 20th, 2018.
Fascinating.
So, I mean, could you talk briefly about why it's significant that he's interviewing a member of the International Israelite Board of Rabbis to get this information about Abba Bivens?
Well, it seems that he's following in the footsteps, or not following in the footsteps, but he's going the same line that Uziel Lewi went, or has gone, which is to go outside of the One West spectrum and, move beyond the mere oral history that exists among One Westers, and he's turning to the people outside of the One West spectrum who remember Bivens, who knew him personally. That's apparently what I'm getting from that, and that's quite interesting.
Which I think is the way to. I think that's part of the way we're gonna have to piece this together. So I'm very thankful that Sam did that. And again, some of this stuff is confirmation. Some of this stuff is disconfirmation, right? But we'll say which is which. And so far, so good. Over time, students of Bivens would become the most vocal proponents of the teaching that white people were Edomites. Now, that's important. It's true they did become the most vocal. However, we have evidence that some of the Hebrew Israelites prior to Bivens were teaching that white people were Edomites. Specifically, my understanding is that was floating around at the Commandment Keepers already.
Yes, it wasn't at the forefront, but apparently that was amongst their more private settings, And it's interesting, you see that Sam Kestenbaum is careful to not say, as some do, that the teaching originates with Bivens. He merely says that that his students became the most vocal.
Yeah, so this is very careful. It's difficult to really find anything. Not that we're trying to do that anyway, wrong with Sam's chapter here, which is rare for any mainstream journalist of any type or author to get everything right about these guys. So this is rare, but quite a feat. So continue on here looking at this. This belief draws from the 25th to 27th chapter of Genesis, in which Esau and Jacob feud over their father Isaac's blessing. Jacob ultimately prevails. In an outrage, Esau holds a deep grudge against his brother. In the biblical narrative, the progeny of Jacob, who is later renamed Israel, are known as Israelites. Next page. Esau's descendants are Edomites. This passage was employed by teachers like Matthew and Bivens to argue that whites were continuing this grudge, deceptively claiming Israelite lineage, when it was black people who were truly God's chosen people of Israel. Shlomo Ben Levi, biography of Rabbi W.A. Matthew at blackjews.org. It's a PDF. A lot of people have looked at that one. I don't know if you want to say anything there, but I'm
just that there we have a source of someone who's connecting the teaching about whites being Edomites being found amongst, in the mouth of Rabbi Matthews, of Wentworth Matthews, formerly Bishop Wentworth Matthews.
Yeah, no doubt. Vernon Brown is saying that Abba Bivens is allied to the prophet and John the Baptist reincarnated through the Spirit. It's a thing of faith. And that is something that Vernon Brown would say. So must be him really joining us this evening. All right, so here we've got black people. Black people were the sole descendants of the tribe of Judah, the thinking goes, making modern-day Jews either mistaken imitators or frauds. While this teaching about Edomites was widespread, groups like the Commandment Keepers inched towards some collaboration with white Jews and quietly pushed this belief into the background. an example of what's it called? Bricolage, I always forget how to say that.
Bricolage, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Where it's like
Dorman uses the term, yeah.
Yeah. And that's from Baraka Huda interview as well. But again, this is stuff like all the way back to what's it called? Harlem's Promise Keepers. What's the old book from the 70s? Oh, Heritage Seekers. You know the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Heritage Seekers, I think, talked about that as well, if I'm not mistaken about which book it was, one of the older books in the Commandment Keepers. But comment on that, Abu.
Well, also the book Black Judaism, when it gets into that African American convert to Hasidic Judaism, he also mentions that in his writings in the 70s about how there's different groups that are accusing white Jews of being Edomites and so on and so forth. But regarding what you have on your screen, it's about to get a little bit more interesting as now it gets into Hatzaad Harishon.
Oh, yeah. And here we go. Bivens appears to have eschewed this move outright. So part of what Bivens didn't like about what was happening with the rabbis at the Commandment Keeper School was they started to do some mild collaboration with mainstream, primarily Ashkenazi Jews in New York, and maybe even on somewhat of an international or larger national scale. And that is something he was not feeling.
Well, actually, can we say something here real quick?
Yeah.
See, I know from the One West perspective now, it's sort of taken for granted that you don't associate with these other congregations. But in that time, in the 60s, a number of the groups that existed and the 70s were doing that. On the one hand, they might feel a certain hostility to mainstream Judaism, but on the other hand, they would work with them, with certain mainstream Jews. The Commandment Keepers were doing that. Some of the groups that were in Philly were doing that. And not only that, but as you may recall from the videos by Uziel Lewy, a person who knew Bivens says he recalls Bivens himself doing that. There's a guy who recounts it said his heart broke when Bivens went to some wedding, some Ashkenazi Jewish wedding or something like that.
Oh yeah.
So that's worth keeping in mind. That we shouldn't superimpose the way it is now back onto that time. In the early stages, there clearly was some overlap and some cross pollination, we might say.
Yeah, no doubt.
Some interplay.
Gia asks, is the guy on the phone an ex-BHI? No, Gia, he's not, but he's been a historian and observer of the movement for 20-some years or so?
No, not that long.
No,
since I became interested in around 2005. So I guess 15 years. And very much an amateur. I'm very much just an amateur on the outside who's been interested in specifically the One West stream for some time. And I'm glad that now we're starting to get a better look,
Yes, indeed.
Because it's interesting even purely on a dispassionate note.
Beginning in 1964, an ill-fated Jewish outreach group called Hatzaad Harishon, the First Step, sought to integrate groups like the Commandment Keepers into the American Jewish fold. Source note for there is Stepping into Zion, Hatzaad Harishon, Black Jews and the Remaking of Jewish Identity. A book came out in 2014. I don't have that book. I wonder if that's a book I need to be getting.
Also, Dorman has a paper as well. He has some. I've seen it get mentioned online. I haven't touched it yet, but Dorman apparently has a really interesting paper on Hatzaad Harishon from years ago, in which he when he interviewed Chaim Bivins.
Wait, really?
Yes, that was actually why Dorman thought when people were talking about Abba Bivins, he was under the impression he had spoken to him, but it turned out he spoke to Chaim Bivins, and who precisely that is about to come up in the article. But so Dorman apparently has a good piece on this as well, a short piece, but nonetheless a piece that
I don't know if I've seen that. I think I might.
Yeah, no, it's not a published work. It's a paper that he did while he was in university, and it is available though because some scholars have gotten their hands on it.
Oh well, I think I might.
We'll discuss that offline.
Yeah, I might need to see that. Yeah, wow. Okay, continue on here. When Hatzaad Harishon organizers invited Bivens to join their project. So again, this shows he's the head of his own thing by now. Because if they're trying to reach out to these other groups, it doesn't make sense they'd be writing to Bivens unless he had his own school. You guys see all this? So they wrote to Bivens in 1971, and that's what you mentioned earlier about when it was dated. Look at this. I love the way Sam wrote this. He wrote a blistering reply, making it clear he wanted nothing to do with their project of racial integration, threatening to sue the organization in court if they used the name of a school in any of their materials. Is this not a true one-Wester? I mean, he founded it, you know what I'm saying? But what is it with these guys always threatening to sue everybody?
Yeah, and successfully sometimes later on, that's for sure.
Yeah, but notice this. So Bivens, you know, on one hand, I kind of had this strange admiration for him because he was almost like this accidental religious pioneer and sort of a esoteric visionary, and sort of the way he's shrouded in mystery makes him interesting to me. I have that. But on the other hand, I realized he was a bigot, and I realized that he influenced negatively a generation of many people in a deceptive way of thinking. And I also realized from eyewitnesses that you mentioned earlier, it appears that he was not really a man of integrity in regards to truth-telling. He would sacrifice truth for practicality to grow his movement. And now you see this, and look at this. You know, we want nothing to do with this. I mean, even though apparently he went to a wedding, so it's like, hey. But here's a quote. This is a quote from a letter found at the school, everybody, or found at the library there, the Schomburg, which we were at last year. We do not have any communication with the Edomites, so-called Jews, he wrote. To be a Jew, you have to come out of the tribe of Judah. This Jewish came from the so-called Edomite Jew. God has said nothing about black Jews, Jewish or Jews. I know the words of God, he said, Israel I have loved, not Jews, Jewish, or black Jews. Now, I'm going to get the source for that, and Abu, if you could kind of explain to everybody what he was trying to say there. But again, notice notice the source, everybody. It's on the screen. So this is a real letter that exists, and we have it now, and Sam's went through it. But please explain, everybody, what he's actually trying to say there.
Well, honestly, there's a little bit of a clumsiness there, which is why I'm glad
he's a true one-Wester. He can't even write.
Yes, well, although I would say I don't only mean in grammatically, but I mean in terms of the reasoning, because he seems to be moving away from the word Jew and Jewish and stuff like that. When at least the word Jew is, biblical, although he does say to be a Jew, you have to come out of the tribe of Judah. When he goes on to sort of show a little bit of hostility to the word Jews after that, almost immediately after that, you see there's sort of a disconnect there. And I think, one-Westers have sharpened up on that in the decades since then. But what I was going to say is that if we were merely sharing this as an oral, sort of as a legend passed down by word of mouth, I think some would be incredulous that this was a correct quote. But yet this is a quote directly from a letter that he penned with his own hand.
Yeah, what's this? This Jewish came from the so-called Edomite Jew. Is he basically just trying to say Jews are actually Edomites? Is that all he's really saying? Because it's a little awkward there.
Yes, that's precisely, because the thing is, Hatzaad Harishon was trying to unite these Israelite communities that were on the fringes of the Jewish world, American Jewry, and bring them more into the mainstream. But of course, that meant essentially uniting with rabbinic Jews, which essentially were considered Edomites by Abba Bivens. And so this is him expressing his hostility that, he's rejecting the idea of, sort of working with people that he considers to be not Israelites, but, imposters, Edomites.
Good stuff. Continuing on. Ironically, one of Bivens' own children, his youngest son, William Chaim, youngest son, or Chaim Bivens, was in a senior position at Hatzaad Harishon at the same time.
Exactly. That's a great detail. It's a fascinating detail. Hatzaad Harishon and this school of Tanakh that was on 125th Street were both had members of the Bivins clan in leadership positions of some sort. Yeah.
And look how we know from the 1940 census. That's the source there. So that means we know his employment. You know what I'm saying? That's his employment there.
But also the family names and stuff like that. The various sons, William and David and so on.
if his son was youngest son, but is old enough to work for an organization like this, it seems like Bivens would have been an older man to some extent, even at this time. When I say older, I mean we don't know exactly.
Oh yes. Well, if you scroll back, I know you want to get back to it.
Oh yeah, we do
on.
know his exact age. I just don't want to give that
Yes.
away yet. We're gonna show
Mhm.
that. That's last but not least. Anyways, yes, we'll talk about
Sorry
that.
about that.
No, you're right though. Bivens died. Well, really, he was killed and. Died in the 1970s, with popular retellings maintaining that he was, quote, killed by Muslims, alternately Nation of Islam or five percenters, following a bloody street fight. And then the example they gave there is from Yohana speaking about it, how it all began, Hebrew Israelites. But I mean, you could find dozens of people echoing that claim. Ariyah, well, actually, we should probably stop there. Okay, you and I were talking about this today. And this apparently was done by Muslims from Newark, New Jersey, correct?
Yes, which is getting a bit of a. I mean, Newark has a bit of a reputation for producing some particularly hard men and some particularly hard Muslims.
Abu, tell everybody what else about 7 or so years earlier. I gotta look it up on my phone here. Seven or well, we don't know the exact.
About 6 years, I think. I think it's about 6 years. Yeah, something like that.
What else were certain Nation of Islam Newark members of the Newark Mosque? What are they known for being involved with, Abu?
The killing of Malcolm X.
Yes.
And,
so,
which is now back in the public consciousness thanks to a documentary on Netflix.
6-part documentary right now on Netflix. There's a 6-part documentary right now on Netflix. You just heard Abu mention it. And you can watch it, and I'm not going to spoil anything like that, but let me just tell you this, that it is without a shadow of a doubt that members of the Newark Mosque from the Nation of Islam are the ones who assassinated Malcolm X, and it appears that 2 of the people who went to prison for it weren't even involved. One was, and then the others are the rest are deceased now. But one is just basically allowed to roam around, and there was definitely police negligence, definitely FBI negligence, and even encouragement. And you got to wonder at the end of the day if perhaps some of the people who didn't get charged that should have. Maybe they were informants, and maybe that's why they got off easy. Now, we don't know all that information. I don't know if you want to comment on that. But my point is, the same group, 7 or so years later, I'm not saying the same exact people, but are the ones who killed Abba Bivens. Comment, Abu.
Well, yeah, I don't know. See, unfortunately, because of the legends, it's terribly unclear if the people who are accused of, well, as the legend goes, Abba Bivens was known as a bit of a fighter. He got into a fight with some Muslims in Newark, and he died from injuries that he suffered in that fight. Now, it's unclear if they were, as Sam points out, if they were members of the Nation of Islam or if they were 5 percenters, according to certain legends. I've even heard from certain people that they were Orthodox Muslims, but this is all like third-hand, oral history passed down from one person to another. But yeah, I think the point that you're trying to make, whether they were Nation of Islam or not, is that Newark in the in the 60s and the 70s, the early 70s, during this period of roughly a decade, had produced some very hard men within the Muslim community, whether Orthodox or heterodox.
We talked about this earlier. Some of the men that began coming into the community there in Newark, New Jersey, sort of chased out the previous tough guys who were the Sicilians. The Italians were the tough guys. And this actually from your own family, partially your own family information. And so for a fact. And so some of these guys took over. And then you even had a situation where, I don't know if you want to tell this story briefly, but it's clear that One Westers were afraid of the Newark, New Jersey Muslims. Do you want to tell that story?
Yes. The story that's come down is that after Bivens died, there was a reluctance to go preach in Newark for a long time, for years. And when they did, they would be very cautious with their approach. And there's one particularly interesting story that's out there, that there was another, I don't know if it was the exact same group of Muslims, but there was a gentleman from a group of Muslims in Newark who used to stand and watch them as they held camp. And, sort of like the way one Westers would later intimidate rival camps, this Muslim would stand and watch them, as perhaps
and he's a man who is purportedly involved with the beating of Bivens.
Somehow connected to that allegedly, according to the legends. And as one of the stories goes, during one of these periods where he's standing there and watching them and, in full view of them, a young member got a little ahead of himself and said that, when we get the spiritual powers, we're not only going to be killing these Edomites, we're going to be killing these Muslims. And as the legend goes, the guy asked him, what makes you think we're going to wait that long now that your intentions have been made clear?
Okay, and so let me translate that. The one Wester, as one Westers are wont, as they often do, saying, hey, we're going to kill these Edomites and we're going to kill you, Mr. Muslim. And the Muslim says,
indirectly,
yeah, and the Muslim's basically saying, oh, really? Well, if that's what you're going to do, then why are we going to wait until then? Maybe we'll take care of the problem the other way around before you get your spiritual powers. It's kind of, hey, shout out to Basic. It looks like Basic knows a lot about Newark. Looks like he's from around the way there, and he's actually talking about the Newark riots. Basic, I don't know if you know, they're working on a prequel to The Sopranos called Saints of Newark that's actually going to have something about that. And we got Gia, who's also from Harlem area. So shout out to everybody there. Go ahead, though, Abu. Continue with that story.
Well, no, and so as obviously I have no idea how much of this is true, but of course then the various versions of that story that I've come across as it goes, the second the kid said that and the man responded in that way, they snatched the kid off of the stage or off of his speaking post. And some versions that the kid even goes over and sort of walks back what he said, something akin to an indirect apology or something like that.
Right,
but the versions that I've heard are that basically this kid gets, lets his mouth run away with itself. And when this guy makes that comment, what makes you think we're going to wait that long now that your intentions are clear? He's quickly snatched away from his speaking post, because they sense that they don't need this problem,
Yep. Continuing on, Ariyah, one of the chief head priests of the Tanakh school, claimed Bivens' mantle for himself and a few other anointed peers. Want to comment on that at all? That's also, by the way, from the ISUPK from Johanna. I mean, that seems at least an established legend.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the standard One West history at this point. That in some sense, Ariyah, picks up the baton and runs with it. But of course, our only source for that is, is Ariyah himself, and then of course his father and Masha, who are no longer alive. But I think those three sort of passed down the One West version,
no doubt,
of the history of Abba Bivens. But how much is that it's clear is when you get outside of it, because in Uziel Lewi's videos, while no one spoke about it in depth, there were these allusions to how other people who were connected to Bivens clearly went a different route and didn't agree with what was going on. So there may have been, even Johanna has alluded to a power struggle. Now he takes it for granted that Ariyah was the one who was correct and in keeping with Bivens' vision. But the point is, even Johanna is aware of this sort of power struggle after Bivens is gone.
Yeah, no doubt. There's a sort of a detractor, Hebrew Israelite friend who often comes in here, Julius. Julius is quoting you, where you said, I have no idea how much of this is true. Let me explain something to you, Julius. What we are doing are repeating what Hebrew Israelites or former Hebrew Israelites have told us, multiple sources or videos that we have seen. So this is... Or things online. These are different forms of communication, multiple places and whatever. And so we are repeating what your fellow co-religionists have said about their history. Now, Julius, I would take money to the bank that Abu knows more about the history of One West than you do, and probably actually cares more about it than you do. He wouldn't say that himself, but I could say that. Now, so Julius,
what I would say is also,
so just know that. And one last thing is this: is we're saying that as a caveat because we're saying what they've been telling us. But the thing is, until we get other confirmations, we take a tentative approach. Now, the beauty of this Kestenbaum article is it confirms some of the things they've been telling us, but there's some things it disconfirms, and so that shows we don't always get accurate information from the old timers. Okay, so I'm just bringing that point out, and so this is historical research is a process. But go ahead, bro. Go ahead, Abu.
What I was going to say was that in this discussion, we're talking about some of the stuff, some of the new information that's come out, thanks to Kestenbaum, and we alluded to also some of the great work that Uziel Lewi has done. But at certain points, we're also recounting some of the oral history. And when we do that, in the interest of intellectual honesty, we're going to say, honestly, I don't know how much of this is true. I'm essentially recounting a story secondhand or third hand, or, an oral legend that has been passed down from multiple people. And as I noted, I mean, something akin to collecting hadiths, I've seen different versions of this story, essentially the same story, but with different details. So that's why it's necessary to be intellectually honest and say, in this case, I don't know how much is true. This doesn't apply to everything we're discussing. It applies to these segues into these interesting Israelite hadiths, if you will.
No doubt.
These legends.
Yes, indeed. I'll continue on here. IUIC claims that on his deathbed, Bivens selected 2 of his students to take over the teachings of his school. But there are also whispers that Bivens may have already had power struggles with the segments of his students when he was still alive. Now, let me give the 2 sources for that. The first one is from the same disc we mentioned earlier, as retold by Nathaniel. And then another one is from Kahanya Panyaga, a former IC UPK member, interview with Kestima on May 25th. Comment on that, because honestly, I don't know much about that, Abu.
No, I mean, I think we've basically exhausted what we know on the subject. We only have these vague allusions to these power struggles and other students who disagreed. I mean, maybe in the future we'll find some more information on that, but unfortunately, that's the extent of my familiarity with that subject. But I think it is fascinating, because I think if we could get to talk to other people who knew him and who are on the other side of these divides, I think we'd get a lot more insight. And God willing, in the future, maybe we'll find something like that.
Yes, indeed. All right. The remnant of Bivens students made up a new guard, helmed by Ariyah, and formed an organization called the Israelite, or Israeli, they changed their names, guys, School of Universal Practical Knowledge, later renamed the Israelite Church of Universal Practical Knowledge, or ICUPK, which met at the same 1 West 125th Street address in Harlem, which we ate at the bottom floor of that at the Shake Shack. And there's a video of us talking, and that was an interesting, good time. Thank you to Nate for saving that video, by the way. Otherwise, we would have never had it. Yeah, Nate, for a while, they went with ICUPK, so they changed it to church. Some people speculate that was to get the 501c3 money, although we don't really know, but they did change it for a time. So it was ICUPK at a time. Okay, the newly renamed church, based in a building on one of the borough's main thoroughfares, provided a military-style structure for mostly young men. Disobedient students would be hurled down the front steps if they stepped out of line. One member recalled, perhaps with a bit of exaggeration. Abu?
Wait, can we see the source for that? Who's this?
That's the same guy.
General Yohana.
Oh, no. Hold on. That's Nate. That's Nathaniel.
Legends. There's many legends about people getting thrown down flights of stairs and stuff like that, and unfortunately, those are also stories that start to overlap and get embellished. And because there was even a legend. Now, I want to be very careful here and say there's a number of people who have come out and said the story is nonsense, but it's worth noting that there was even a legend floating around that that Masha himself was unfortunately a victim of getting pushed down a flight of stairs. Now, I want to be careful here. I'm not endorsing that story. I just bring it up as an example of how the legends grow.
Masha, everybody, is supposed to be King David reincarnated, according to Ariyah, who later...
And also one of the 3 successors to Bivens, in a sense.
Yes. And then, of course, he formed the core of the 7 heads later on. And Masha also started something later on when he split with Ariyah called the House of David. Speaking of getting thrown down the stairs, Abu, have you ever heard the joke about the Calvinist who fell down a flight of stairs?
No, go ahead. Tell me the punchline.
He stood up, dusted himself off, picked himself up, looked back at the flight of stairs and looked back down and said, I'm glad I got that over with. I always thought that was funny. Yes, some people won't even understand what the joke is, but that's okay. It's interesting. Do you remember in the Who Killed Malcolm X video on Netflix where the man was speaking about how you didn't need to give direct orders for things to happen, and he was saying in regards to there could have been all kinds of ways that you could have Malcolm X be ordered to be executed, but not directly. You know what I'm saying?
Elijah Muhammad, they're saying, not specifically Elijah Muhammad, that the cult of personality that surrounded him, that he had said something as simple as like, we need this. This problem is really bothering me, and someone should take care of it. Even if he had said something like that, that would be enough to set it into motion. That's the argument from people who are familiar with the culture.
Exactly.
At that time.
So check this out. The reason why I mentioned that is this. In the same kind of breath, he said we had code words like that. Like he said, hey, there's this brother here who didn't sell enough newspapers today because, they got to go out in the street corner and sell the final call. This is everyone, just so you don't get lost. We're talking about the Nation of Islam now. And they would say, there's a brother who didn't sell enough newspapers today. We need to take him out to the park and bless him. Mm-hmm. Do you remember what bless him was code for, Abu?
Yeah, they would hand him the beating of a lifetime in the park.
Yeah, they would give him the beating of a lifetime in the park. So they would say, we're going to take him out the park and bless him. So there's kind of these euphemistic ways, and also this kind of strict obedience. It's interesting. Notice my point by saying all that is to say that the Nation of Islam was doing that around the same time. Apparently, Abba Bivens was throwing people down the stairs.
or his successors were. It's unclear who was throwing who.
Hey,
yeah. And not only that, the splinter groups continued to do that. GMS has bragged for years about allegedly breaking the door in their school in Bridgeport, Connecticut, by throwing a guy through it. So
wait, who did what? Who did what?
No, I'm saying that the legends of throwing people down flights of stairs and doing things similar to that go on to state that even the splinter groups would continue these traditions because GMS bragged for years about allegedly breaking the door of their school in Bridgeport, Connecticut, by throwing a wayward member through it. A man who was in the process of being expelled.
So who did Tahar do the throwing? Did they say who?
Yeah, apparently, if I recall correctly, I think it was like Tahar and Gabar, maybe somebody else, and they certainly Gabar, and as they throw him through the door, they break the door.
Throwing brothers down the stairs is a part of their liturgy.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
If they had a prayer book, that'd be part of the steps of discipline.
Yes, do this in remembrance of Abba Bivens.
It's part of the steps of discipline, yeah.
Yes.
All right, so this school, known simply as One West after its street address, was a simmering hotbed of religious creativity. It would give rise to myriad future leaders, but would also be plagued with conflicts and spasmodic periods of reform in the years to come. Innovations, both strategic and doctrinal, came to the new One West Church. Through the 70s and 80s, remnant of Bivens alkalites dressed in colorful clothing, donning capes and turbans. Some wore studded leather outfits and camouflage. Theatrical reimaginings of what an ancient Israelite might look like transported into the street culture of New York City. Confrontational street corner ministry became a mainstay of their outreach. From their early days, One Westers understood the power of public provocation and embraced popular media. They ran a local TV program and later taped their street ministry. With the advent of the web years later, they would upload those videos online, maximizing the controversy their street ministry sparked. Footnote for that is the former ICUPK member. I mean, we could have wrote that paragraph, albeit not as well. Comment on that, because while you're doing that, I actually want to pull up the picture that was newly discovered of newly published with Ariyah to give an example about what Sam is talking about here. But go ahead, brother. I'm gonna drag that up real quick.
Well, just that certainly they would have their as they call them, their camps since at least the 70s. Well, actually, even perhaps in the 60s, because there are people outside of the One West spectrum who remember seeing Bivens in Morningside Park and stuff like that. And then, as is alluded to there, they got onto public access television in Manhattan and I guess other boroughs of New York City as well. And then the internet, credit has to be given where credit is due. I think really GMS pioneered the spreading the sort of One West message over YouTube, and they sort of changed the paradigm when they did that. Then everybody sort of followed in GMS's footsteps quickly because they saw how successful they were in that regard in the early days around 2007.
Yeah, no doubt. And Morningside Park, by the way, is where we use our secret government contacts to stumble upon GMS there in Harlem last summer, ever so perturbing to her.
Yes, it was Morningside Park indeed.
Shire Allah, is that how you say the brother's name?
Mm-hmm.
Shay. Okay, I got it. Can you talk a little bit about this picture while I bring it up? Because this is
Which picture
relevant.
are you going?
Yeah, it's relevant to the paragraph we just read. It's just this is
Is
not
it from
related.
the '95 Passover?
Yeah.
Is this the picture you're going to show?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah. Well, it's just that if I'm not mistaken, it's their Passover from it could be Columbia University or maybe it was Manhattan Center. I don't know, but I think it was Columbia. One of their last Passovers before their split, they have this picture, and the number of people. GMS often talks about members of the Wu-Tang Clan showing up at least one Passover, and here you have a picture of a major gathering of One West, and members of the Wu-Tang Clan are there, and other rappers. And then, of course, you see a number of people. You see Nathaniel. You see, I believe, you see Shire Allah himself. You see, we're not going to see Bivens. I know that's worth noting because the show is primarily about Bivens. But you see some of the seven heads. You see Ariah. You see Yeshaya. You see. I think that's it. And there's, well, you'll be showing it shortly, I suppose. Yeah, here we go.
Yes, I'm showing it now. Just let me move. I'm going to move my self out of the way here. So let's comment on who's who here, brother.
So in that top picture on the right in the red, you see a gentleman who at the time was known as Nathaniel Alaga, who's now Nathaniel Ray, who's pioneered Israel United in Christ, which is apparently the largest One West group, seems by far the most successful and disciplined One West group at this time. He's built quite an impressive organization as far as One West history is concerned, but that's him when he was somewhat of a low-ranking member within the original school. In the forefront in the blue is Yeshaya. Then you see Masha.
That's real quick. That's during Nathaniel's Gadite stage, right?
Yes, that's what people say, that during that period he was under the understanding that he was from the tribe of Gad. That's what I've heard. I'm not entirely certain. Now, it's my understanding now he identifies as descending from the tribe of Judah, and I'm not sharing that with any intention of disrespecting him. I mean, we all can learn new things about ourselves and our heritage over time.
Well, being from Judah is kind of essential to be in leadership, but hey, whatever. Okay, so we've also got Ariah is sitting down in the red, so he's on the right side of the screen. There's two pictures here. Clearly, these are photographs being, taken pictures of. Ariah's there on the right-hand side. You can see his right side and his left side. He's looking both ways. And this is out of Passover, so they're in their kind of most elaborate dress here. And then in the bottom picture, that is RZA. So RZA is at the 95 Passover. And what's this? There's a guy standing up named Fish B1, who apparently is also an MC that you looked up today, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, apparently I'm guessing he's the gentleman in the brown vest there. Yeah, but I'm not terribly familiar with him. Yeah. But it is interesting to see a member of the Wu-Tang Clan there, because of course the story has floated around in One West oral history for years about the members of the Wu-Tang Clan attending ICUPK Passover.
We see some evidence there. And there is Shire Allah himself in the green and yellow on the bottom picture with the microphone.
Yeah, I would believe so, apparently.
Yeah, and he's the one who shared the picture. And he was the one who made the famous appearance on Montel. And he's since calmed down a little bit. And I'd like to get him on the show one day, if that's possible.
He's a very interesting gentleman, yes, indeed.
Now
and someone very familiar with the history as well. And he's as I understand it, his Facebook page is bringing out lots of interesting information about One West history. And,
even like this picture, which was shared yesterday. It's got 168 comments, 40 shares, 215 reactions. We don't know who the man in between RZA and Fish B1 is in the blue, I don't believe.
No, I don't know.
And the man in the purple apparently is someone named Ezekiel.
Oh, I don't know. I thought that was the guy in the background. I have no idea. I'm sorry.
Do you know the guy in the purple then?
I do not.
It seems like if you're going to be at the table, wouldn't you have to be one of the seven heads? Could that be?
It could be someone significant. I just don't know who it is.
So there's some of the seven heads, you're not exactly sure how they look, right? Isn't there like one unknown kind of guy?
I mean, there's only certain people I've seen, unfortunately. Like obviously I know what Shar looks like, but I wouldn't know. For example, Kazakh, I couldn't pick him out of a photo.
Is he the only one you don't know what he looks like? Kazakh. How do you spell
Correct,
How do you spell his name?
If I'm remembering correctly, it's CHAAZAQ.
So that could be Kazakh, or it could be the person named Ezekiel, or Ezekiel could be the person in blue between RZA and Fish B1, right? Okay, and then standing up there is the one who made the famous appearance on the BBC documentary Yeshaya. A lot of people remember him for his nails, and he's standing up with a plate, and then you can see his back there in the bottom picture. I don't know if you want to comment on Yeshaya at all before we go lastly to Mashah.
No, yeah.
Sitting down with the green and yellow, and it looks like he's got his head covered. I mean, is there a hole on the top of that hat?
I'm sure there is. I would assume so.
There's Mashah, and I mean, I'm trying. You know, they're each one of these is so different. You know, it's like Nate looks like he could be, you know, like an extra, with show enough. You know, and then Yeshaya looks like one of the three wise men. Your man Mashah looks like he could be at a Ren fair. The guy in the purple looks like he could maybe be, I don't know, could he work for the Catholic Church? I don't know. Go ahead though. What are you gonna say?
What I was gonna say is, and you just read a little while ago from Kestenbaum's chapter, where it stated that they would attempt to capture what they felt Israelites might look like. I remember when Mashah appeared on Morton Downey Jr.'s show way back in, I'm guessing, the late 80s. It could be the early 90s. And Morton Downey Jr., you know, gave him a little bit of a light teased him a little bit about wearing cowboy boots. And so he said, well, you know, you need to read the Bible. You know, the Israelites wore boots. And apparently Morton Downey Jr. responded along the lines of, yeah, but those are cowboy boots, you know.
Yeah, that's so funny, though. So Morton Downey Jr. says to Mashah, hey, bro, why you got cowboy boots on? And Mashah says, well, read the Bible, man. They wore boots in the Bible. And Morton Downey, yeah, but not cowboy boots. It's so epic. But anything to say about this picture before I go back to the chapter?
No, I think we should get back to the chapter because I'm looking forward to getting into his name and
You know, speaking briefly while I bring up the chapter, even the picture I used in the thumbnail, that's something recently delivered as well. Could you briefly talk about that while I bring up this chapter?
Yes. So that picture, I first came across it when it was posted by Zion Lex. Forgive me for forgetting his name there for a second, but Zion Lex is another gentleman who's attempting to delve into Israelite history, both within the One West spectrum and outside of it. He himself is outside of the One West spectrum. He's a very interesting and intelligent individual within the Israelite spectrum. And I originally was under the impression that he was the first to bring this picture out. However, there was another gentleman who brought it out a year before him named Zebulon ben Lewi Hezekiah, I believe. And he also brought this out, and it's a picture. It's claimed it's a picture of Bivens, and it looks like the one other picture of Bivens we have, you know, is very similar to this. You know, they're probably, I don't know, 20 years apart, 30 years apart, but the face is very similar. While the beard is obviously longer and whiter here than in the picture we have of Bivens back when Ariel was like 14 years old. Nonetheless, the beard is similarly shaped, you know, so apparently this is a picture of Bivens holding a Torah scroll.
Yeah, and the brother's working on the beard for a hot minute.
Yeah. It's an impressive beard.
Yeah, no doubt. And so there he is. I wonder if that's when he was a commandment keeper, or I wonder if his own school had one of these Torah scrolls.
No, in light of how old he is, I would assume he's this is him in his in his late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that gives us an opportunity to get back to when he was born. And what Kestenbaum found, and what we've also confirmed in our own studies.
Yep.
We've come across the same material.
And then shout out to Mr. Phil Fox for the super chat. Shout out to MJ Jackson. Everybody subscribe to him. And yes, I do have a new microphone thanks to my friend DJ Next. Continuing on. REI is widely credited with introducing two major additions said to be the product of divine inspiration to the group's doctrine. The first was the creation of a modified form of Hebrew, Lashon Kodash, a spin on Lashon Kadosh, a common Hebrew phrase which means holy tongue. Unlike standard Hebrew, Lashon Kodash is spoken with only one wide sound, or vowel, instead of the standard dozen vowel sounds. This version of Hebrew was meant to be free of the Yiddish-contaminated modern Hebrew. Source for that is John Jackson's book, Thin Description. You want to comment briefly on that?
No. I mean, obviously, we've done quite a bit on Lashon Kodash. The only thing I would say is that it's not entirely just an sound. The ayin has the I sound. That's the 16th character. By the way, I know this goes a bit off script, but could I send you the picture? Because I have the picture of Bivens as a young man and then juxtaposed with this picture of him as an old man. If
sure,
I could send it to your email. Do you want me to send it to your Gmail real quick?
Yeah. Go ahead, bro.
All right, I'll do that real quick while you're talking.
The second One West innovation was a new chart of the nationalities and ethnic groups purported to constitute the true Israelites, which became a popular tool for outreach. A chart of these tribes, photocopied on handouts or collaged on a sandwich board, was a sort of genealogical decoder, claiming to connect descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel with modern-day corollaries. Significantly, these tribes were not limited to only African Americans. While African Americans held the primary places of the tribe of Judah, Haitians were said to be from the tribe of Levi, for example, and Puerto Ricans from the tribe of Ephraim. This chart also included other groups like Mexicans, Cubans, and Native Americans who composed the tribes of Issachar, Manasseh, and Gad, respectively. And their ethnic chart of the ancient Israelites. These groups were the downtrodden of the earth, one Westers argued, whose heritage had been forgotten. Quote, "These are the people that constitute the nation of Israel," said another one of the leaders, known as Masha, in a television appearance in 1992. Quote, "That is their identity, their true identity." And that is from IUIC in the classroom, the Israelites 12 tribes sign there. And I'm about to continue on unless you got something to say, Abu.
No, just that all I wanted to say is I sent you the photos.
Got you. One of the many young people drawn to ICUPK at this time was a teenager named Nathaniel Ray. Okay, I feel like I don't know how much further I'm going to read into this.
No, I don't think there's much need to go further. I would say go backwards about 4 or 5 paragraphs or 6 paragraphs.
Yep. Are you ready?
And again, for people who are who wind up getting their hands on the hard copy, we've reached the point where we're roughly at page 280. We're going back to the top of page 278, at least in the hard copy.
And now is the time for the big reveal. Is it right? I mean,
yeah, I would say so in terms of both his name and his date of birth, and this lines up with what we found as well. But Kestenbaum came across it before we did.
Yeah, I think this is the time. So let's get a round of applause here. Got a round of applause. Let's get the DJ horn as well. Get the DJ horn. All right, I'm gonna go back here, and this is the time I'm gonna start from the very beginning of the discussion of Bivens, and here's where the information is going to come. All right, let's see here. I'm going to start right about here. Okay. Around this time of diversification in the 1960s, another Commandment Keeper attendant set off to form his own group based at 1 West 125th Street in Harlem, just 2 blocks from the Commandment Keepers. Known as Abba Bivens, sometimes Eber bin Yamin, Yam Yam, or simply Pop Bivens, he signed his name on official correspondence as Rabbi E. Bivens and an ornate cursive hand. And by the way, apparently we know that from the letter, right? Or from the ledger. From the ledger, it could be.
Yep.
While some contemporaneous groups, like the Commandment Keepers and a Chicago group known as the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem, who migrated to Israel amid much controversy, received a tremendous amount of popular and critical attention, Bivens' life and legacy is a relative terra incognita. That just means something unknown. Let me look here and look at the footnote. John Jackson does ethnographic work within a small Harlem group influenced by 1 West in his book Real Black Adventures in Racial Sincerity, but does not address Bivens' life story. Bivens, under the name Abba Bivens, does make a brief appearance in Jackson's thin description. Hey, look! Vocab Malone's polemic, Barack Obama versus the Black Hebrew Israelites, mentions Bivens, but is primarily a theological critique of 1 West. Oh, right on, I made a cameo in the footnotes. But that's an accurate description here. Okay, continuing on here. Materials I've found reveal that Abba Bivens was born Edward Meredith Bivens in Philadelphia on July 31st, 1896, the son of James C. Bivens and Emile Bivens. And we've got the information about his parents from a 1910 Census Bureau
And this information is actually now online as well. Like if you go into Ancestry.com and other sources, I've come across this as well. I think I found his mother's name spelled alternatively with an A, but nonetheless, exactly that. James C. Bivens and Amelia Bivens, excuse me. I forget what her maiden name was. I think it might have been Harris or something to that effect. And then they cover his kids, including
Because weren't we talking
William
about
and David.
this? Weren't we talking about this before the chapter came out a little bit? If I remember, we were talking about this, but it wasn't absolute. It was like there's different possibilities, I believe.
Yes. Well, it's a point of interest because this is where we can return to what we were saying about Al-Azhar. Al-Azhar is not the only person who claims that Bivens' real name, his or government name or given name, however you want to call it, that his name was Leroy. Bivens.
Okay, so there's
Yes.
by the way, everyone, there's a discrepancy. We know one Westers who claim Abba Bivens, as they call him, and as he describes himself, or sometimes Pop Bivens, have said that his actual real name or government name is Leroy, and he's from Georgia. And I believe Al-Azhar even claims to know the city or the town.
I forget what it is, but it came up in one of his videos. Yeah.
But we know where he was born now.
Yes. Apparently, yes. The father of Chaim Bivens or William Bivens and David Bivens was who is this Edward Meredith Bivens, was born in Philadelphia, and I've come across the exact same date of birth that Kestenbaum has here, the 31st of July in 1896, which would mean when he passed, he was roughly 75 years old because he apparently passed in 1971, I believe.
Which is wild, man! Like a 71-year-old dude trying
or 75, yeah.
A 75-year-old dude. I'm sorry, trying to fight like a bunch of Muslim, like it's like you know what I'm saying? Like that's it's like, bro, maybe now's not the time. And it's also messed up that they would like beat him to death. I mean, honestly, seriously. I mean, still. We have Edwin Kelly in the live chat who says, I also was erroneously told his name was Leroy. Edwin, I'd be curious, do you remember who told you that? What Hebrew Israelite, or where did you hear that from? Who told you Leroy? Yeah, you were already getting into this. You had found. Can you tell people about the information you found prior to Kestenbaum's confirmation? You know what I'm saying? Because you said you had stumbled across this as well. Because I remember discussing it with you. But how did you find what you found prior? Because this is really a confirmation of something you had already suspected, right? Hello, can you hear me?
You talking to me? I'm sorry. I thought you were talking to someone in the live chat.
No, talking to you. We're not going to have a conversation.
Yes. I had come across this before the chapter came out. I came across it with the help of Sam Kestenbaum, though he had shared with us some of his methodology, and very grateful for that. And then we found out that available in different websites, like Ancestry.com, that has these sort of records. That's where you can find, the lineages of the members of Hatzaad Harishon, including William Bivens or Chaim Bivens, and that's where you come across Edward Meredith Bivens, who, by the way, I'm sorry, I just checked my notes. It's 1972 when he passed away, and he was 75 years old, apparently. I don't have the exact date of his passing yet. And
1972, so that means, he wrote that letter response
in 71.
Hypothetically about a year before he died. They moved out in 69. So we have a much clearer timeline, because if you listen back to the old dividing line program, July of 2016, we were saying certain things that we now know are true, but our timeline is some big gaps and big questions in there. But we did discuss, this rabbinic Judaism influence upon One West Hebrew Israelism, but there was unclear things as well. And so now, hypothetically, because I don't know if this has been talked about, Bivens could have went down to Georgia, obviously, at some point.
Yes, of course. We only know of him being born in Philadelphia, but we don't have. I myself don't know if he, how long he stayed there, or if he found his way back to the South somehow. But yeah, this certainly flies in the face of the One West history, which is that he was from the South. Now, real quick, I want to circle back.
And then he was told, and the story goes, he was told by a former slave in the South that our people are the Israelites. Now see, that could be Bivens literally making stuff up, or people making stuff about him afterwards
on his behalf. Yeah,
it could be entirely fallacious. We just really don't know. We can't trust these guys.
The interesting thing about him being in Philadelphia is there was an Israelite movement in Philadelphia as well. If I'm not mistaken, Cherry's people had some sort of influence out there, because I know some of the non-One West groups, they can sort of trace their roots back to offshoots of Cherry's group that were in Philadelphia.
And FS Cherry, it seems like, because I've sometimes said Crowdy was first, but it seems like Cherry may have been really the first person before Crowdy to come up with the idea, as far as on record, that, hey, we're the real Israelites, right?
Oh, it gets very murky for me. Unfortunately, I can't speak on it. But yeah.
But okay. Somebody, Captain Soul, wants to know, and a couple people are asking, Abu, can you explain the deal with Yam Yam or Yam Yam? Like, what's up with the name is what they want to know.
So think of the name Benjamin, which is Binyamin, son of the right, or right hand, or right side. Yam Yam is apparently the Lashawan Kodash rendering of that part, if you take a Ben from Binyamin.
I feel like I haven't really ran into many One Westers with this name.
Occasionally you'll meet a guy who's Bun Yum Yum, especially if he's Jamaican, you'll hear they'll say, like, Bun Bun Yum Yum or something like that. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but I think one of the members of the currently extant House of David, HODC, there's an older gentleman named Bun Yum Yum in there. If I'm not mistaken.
Do you wonder if Bivens' background is Jamaican because of this?
It's I would be reluctant to guess that, but I don't know. It's an interesting thought.
Like, why is he son of Benjamin? Because the reason I say that is, Kestenbaum clearly says, okay, Ariyah with the doctrinal innovation of the 12 tribes chart. However, we've played on the show before information that shows that Abba Bivens apparently was the one who, it appears, brought out a version of the 12 tribes chart prior to that. And so there's some conflict there within their retelling. But if that's the case, he may have already had the revelation that, he was a Benjamite. Why else would he be calling himself that? You know what I mean? Why does he call himself son of Benjamin?
It's an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, it could also be just that he found it an interesting. I guess we got to look deeper into.
Yeah, we don't really know.
Start looking into James Bivens, and then, because if I'm not mistaken, Ancestry.com has some information on James Bivens and his parents and so on down the line. So maybe we can go a little bit deeper into his lineage.
He spent much of his life in Pennsylvania,
marrying,
raising a family, and working as a public school janitor. Source: United States Census Bureau, 1940.
There you go.
By the 1950s, he and his family had relocated to New York City and fallen into the Commandment Keepers orbit. We also, I believe, I'm not saying we need to say it, but it appears we have his wife's name as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let me see. I could pull that up in a second.
We also have, I believe, we know how many children he had, at least officially, right?
That I don't have at the tip of my fingers, but at least 3. I knew there was Edward David Bivens, there was William Bivens, who became Chaim, yeah, and then I don't, off the top of my head, I'm losing track if there was any others. So at least 2.
And we know evidence of a granddaughter who is actually mildly active on social media.
Yes, Sarah, his granddaughter Sarah. I don't know if it's appropriate to
no. You
her screen name, but yeah.
Don't say any more about that.
I'll just say that she's occasionally popped up. A decade ago, she wrote briefly to Truth After Knowledge, and recently she's written to Kestenbaum and Dorman on other social media platforms. And I haven't had much interaction with her, but I certainly appreciate her sharing a little bit of her family history.
Yeah, so this is absolutely fascinating and important stuff. Here, I'm going to show this. I don't know how this is going to show up, but when we flip out of this book, I'll show the comparison picture you sent me.
Mabel Harris, that was his wife's name. Mabel Rebecca Harris, who became Mabel Bivens.
Yeah, so we know more now than has ever been previously known that can be confirmed through multiple sources. And I would like to know if there's any Hebrew Israelites or former Hebrew Israelites who have evidence or even family members that could discuss this. And I am very interested to know why some of you guys believe his name is Leroy and that he's from Georgia.
Yes, I'm interested in that as well, and in the most respectful way possible.
Yeah.
I certainly don't.
It's not a debate. We just want to know what's going on.
Yeah, I'm interested in their sources, and especially, as I've said before, especially excuse me, Al-Azhar. I'm especially interested in his sources because I do think, as I said before, that if he makes a claim about Israelite history, that even if we disagree, even if we think it might be in error, we should take his claim seriously, precisely because he seems to be very sincere and very interested and very serious about his attempts to reconstruct the history, unlike a lot of other people. So he deserves credit. He deserves a certain level of respect. And so I am interested in his sources for that.
No doubt. My man
With the
BK
utmost
apologist. Man, BK apologist from Brooklyn says House of David is still active. Vocab Malone, they meet in downtown Brooklyn, and I believe that's true.
Mm-hmm. And they're also still every now and then videos of them pop up on YouTube. And they recently made a trip to Israel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, so bring it all home, Abu. What's the next step in all this? Where do we go from here?
I think what's going to happen is eventually we're going to find our way back to the Schoenberg Research Library. We're going to get into their archives, and what I'm hoping to do is to be able to, rather than merely reference them, we're going to show some of these materials. That's what I'm hoping to do, and maybe we'll have a future video that might take a month or two, or God willing, whatever it is that God wills for that. That's my hope. That we'll be able to show some of that in the near future. I think that's the next place to go, and then also to continue to try to reach out to people who are familiar with the history, whether they're within the One West spectrum or outside of it, or merely family members and so on down the line. And I think it's interesting to also share this information publicly, because I think other people can then build upon it and get a clearer picture as it goes on. And this doesn't have to be polemical. It can be, someone like Sam Kestenbaum is clearly not interested in doctrinal debates. He's interested in the history. And so, even for gentlemen like that, for other people who might have a sort of dispassionate approach to the subject.
Yeah, no doubt. And from an apologetics, from a Christian apologetics standpoint, can you help people understand or explain why this is important?
Well, I think you have a better understanding of a movement the better you understand its history. And you've already pointed out that understanding history has been helpful to understanding, to dialogue with Mormons. And also, while Islamic history can be very much a point of contention, some interesting discussions come about as a result of attempts to assess and reassess early Muslim history, sometimes going into the Orthodox sources and sometimes diverging or moving outside of the Orthodox sources, as some scholars do. And I think there's a value there, because to understand the history of a movement is to better understand that movement in many respects, and to understand its doctrinal development, for example.
Yeah, no doubt. And I appreciate the people.
By the way, did you get that picture I sent?
Yeah, I'm going to show people that, and then I think I'm going to bust into the freestyle, man.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. That's good to close with.
All right, so let me share this real quick so people can see. Let me move my screen out of the way here so people can see this clearly. So there is what are the two ages here, I guess, approximately here for this?
That's going to take me a second to figure out, because what we do know is the picture on the left. The popular legend is that it happened at the bar mitzvah of Ariyah. I don't believe that legend is entirely correct, because Bivens himself looks like he's preparing for Hoshana Rabbah or something like that, in the midst of Sukkot or something like that. But nonetheless, while you don't see it here,
wait, what did you just say? I'm sorry. Can you? I don't know what you. I don't know what you're saying.
The popular legend. You're not showing the whole picture here, but in this picture of Bivens on the left, standing next to him.
Yeah, no. Traditionally, they said this
Ariyah.
is. They say it's so Ariyah is a young man in it, and they've traditionally said, well, he's at Ariyah's bar mitzvah. That's the standard story.
And I don't think that's true, because in the same picture, Bivens is holding a palm leaf, a palm reed, and so I believe that what he was doing was something relating to Sukkot, that it was in the midst of Sukkot. Now, admittedly, it could be both. It could be Sukkot and it could be the bar mitzvah of Ariyah, for all we know. But whatever the case, he's holding a palm reed, which seems to hint at when the picture may have been taken. It may have been taken around the time of the biblical feast of Sukkot, but or booths, as some call it, or tabernacles. But whatever the case, it's taken at a time when Ariyah was very young, so I'm guessing about 60 years ago. So let's say this picture was taken late 50s, early 60s. And then this other picture was taken, I'm assuming, towards the end of Bivens' life, so presumably late 60s, early 70s. So maybe there's 10 to 15 years between them, maybe even 20 years between them. But the thing is, the picture on the left is definitely Bivens. This is a picture that exists still to this day at 1941 Madison Avenue. It first started to appear in public when the ICGJC put it in their Purge Out the Rebels DVD, and then later on, Truth After Knowledge put the picture online because someone from the ICGJC's Philly school sent it to the group, and then after that, everybody had it from 2007 onwards. Then the picture on the right is this picture that was shared first by Zebulon Ben Lewi Hezekiah, I believe his name was, and then more widely by Zion Lex. Now, when you compare the two, they do look very similar. I'm willing to accept that this is the same man. The eyes look similar. The beard, although it's much longer and whiter, is similarly shaped. It hangs on his face in a very similar way. It really does look like the same man to me. Even the eyebrows are similar.
Yeah, and I agree. And of course, these are people associated with this telling us these things. Well, Abu, thank you very much for joining.
It was a joy to discuss this subject.
Could not have done it without you, brother. And shout out to Sam for doing this. And I really do hope we hear from some Westerners. We do not need to have an adversarial relationship about this. You know what I'm saying? We can just talk and try to get to the bottom of this truth. Or non-Westerners, just anybody interested in the truth who has good information. Hit us up on social media, please. Twitter, Khamr, Vocab, Malone. Just hit us up somehow, please. All right, brother, you ready? I'm about to freestyle, bro. I'm gonna let you
do
go.
it. God bless. Thank you very much.
All right, let's do some special effects here. Let me see here. Let's see. I think this will be good. Freestyle time. Vocab Malone. Rock this mic. Here we go. You know it's tight. Two-night show with the boo. Coming through. Mic check 1 2. Turn that beat up and make it hot. Reppin' the conference, doctor for the block. Coming through an electric shock. Revealing information about that doc. Doctored picture, nah, it's real. Peep this out now, he got the skill. Investigating, Sam, check it. Rock the mic, yes, I wreck it. We respect it if you got the history. Abu Bivens was once a mystery. Listerine will make my mouth clean. That's what I do before I go to bed and dream. In a few hours, gotta take a shower. Rock the mic, eat it up and devour. With spiritual power, but not like GMS. Yes, spit this from my chest. It's fresh. Vocab Malone. Hello, how you doing? Freestyling in my home. Once again, you know it's on. Yes, I saw him have a poem in the picture, but these dudes misuse scripture. I will hit ya like an elixir. Rock this mic, and then I be a splitter like a Y splitter hitter. Gotta keep going, never ever be a quitter. Yeah, now we doing. Come through, people out, we are pursuing the truth. Gotta know the ill information. People out now across the nation, basic in the house. From Harlem, yes indeed, now I'm starring upon the track like Mr. Soko. Immortal jungle beat in the house, yo. Got the fire, got it nice. Here's how we do when we slice precise. Yeah, so fat, I need a girdle. Slicing it up like Shredder versus Turtle. Donatello, a Raphael. Thank Jesus Christ, I'm safe from hell. Like LL, I rock the bell. I see this picture, I look at it well. What do I see? It's not that weird. I see a black and then a white beard, cause he got older. Open up the folder, box 1. Yo, I thought that I told ya. Kestenbaum came with the truth, no longer bound by the false information called Leroy. We not trying to destroy your fake legend. Yo, let's keep it. Keep on pressing, and now you peep it. So peep it out now, that is the catchphrase. Talking about back in the days. Hey, did he get saved before he died? I hope Yahweh was the one he called. I'm not bald, but one day I might be like Paul. Switching, transforming, rearranging. Peep this out now, it's not stranging to one another facts. I wish I could ask the magic backpack. It's It's in the back, right over there. People out now, it's so rare to take these pictures and compare. I don't play no truth or dare. We keep it truth when I step in the booth. Yo, I got a loose tooth. That's just the word that happened to rhyme. Hey yo, check it out. Back in the day, did the crime of graffiti art. They call me John Mark, Captain Soul. You sparked the art. What's up, Nate 2? Hello to the crew, Carlos Lopez, you too, and Rox B, and all the squad. What's up, basic yo? It ain't that odd to be going hard for the Lord. Jump in the studio and record. Yo, I rock the beat. What's up, Rox B? We keep it strange and oddly. Gotta have a party. John Markey, how you do? I got the Sparky microphone. It's the MIC. What's up, Rox B? And plus 2D. New 1-2. Switch the beat to the second. Give me foul blood and I will wreck it. That's the name of the beat. The name of the beat coming up. The instrumental's called Foul Blood. Soko named it, not me. So that's why I said that. 1, 2, 3, here we go, new beat. Let's rock it. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Yo. Yo, can you hear me, y'all? Can you hear me, y'all? How's the mic sounding? Basses pounding. Yeah. Here we go, here we go. Chillin' in the seat, rockin' out to the Soko beat, yeah. And now I'm spittin', what's his name? Abba Bivens, nah. Didn't start with an L, we know the real way to spell. Looked up the cell and plus the letter. Found the truth, it makes it better. Got a better picture, not the scripture. They didn't speak, now I enlist the help of y'all to know the real. Hello, how you doing with a freestyle skill? Yeah, now it's getting kinda ill. What's up to Julius, last name of Will? Yums, yo, the beast, yum, yum, like the first dude's name, tum-tums, what I'm needing, now I'm reading, grab the mic and then I'm proceeding, what I'm needing, give me the word of God, I'm feeding, Jesus is bleeding upon the cross, that's why I'm saved, no longer lost, I call him the boss, I call him the Lord, I call him Jesus, I can't afford to pay for my sin, I got born again. He saved me, punched me in the chin, knocked me off my high horse like Apostle Saul. That's his old name, but he got called to share the Bible to the Gentiles. Jump on the mic, I freestyle. Go in New York, jump turnstiles. You get in trouble. Ooh, honey child, things are gonna get much better, yo. I rock the microphone, read the letter, yo. Written by Abba to the Jews. What's to say? Got some brand new news. Got his real name, he calls himself a rabbi. Glow on the mic like it was a cat's eye. Cat's eye, yo, I eat a ribeye. Come now, got to count to 5. Count to 5, yo, I survive. Jesus the Christ, he helps me thrive. Yeah, this is the end of the show. Hope you enjoyed the flow, yo. Come back tomorrow doing a show on 2 Corinthians 5:20. We're gonna be talking about how to be an ambassador for Jesus Christ. Our street apologists will make apologetics fun again. Shout out to y'all, man. Could not do it without y'all. Nate wants me to say fart, so I just did. Peace out, y'all.
Turn your radio up. Whoa. Radio time. Whoa. You're now listening to Street Apologists. Street Apologists.